to help you as end users, I should say customers, discover what other companies are doing with the iPad and the iPhone in their business. And hopefully as I go through these few use cases, you'll be able to relate them to your business and figure out exactly how the iPhone is being used to transform business. So a little background. About 5 years ago, Apple introduced the iPhone, and it was well received by the enterprise. And since we introduced it, we've been introducing more and more enterprise features. And consumers as well as executives, we're bringing the iPhone into the office. And we noticed that the IT organizations were getting more and more pressure to start supporting the iPhone. And then a few years ago, we released the iPad, and it really made a big splash as well. And so nowadays, you're going to be hard-pressed to find an IT organization that doesn't fully support iOS devices in their company. But what's more important is that many of these companies have moved beyond just the support of the iOS device as a productivity tool. And what I mean by productivity is checking your email and doing calendaring and all that good stuff. What many companies have done beyond that is figured out that the iPad is a game changer when it comes to transforming their business. And in terms of increasing communication, in terms of going paperless, getting rid of the paperwork and doing data entry directly, or empowering people that are in the field, accessing databases to enhance the business, using it as a tool to work with Bluetooth sensors that take statistical readings about heat and proximity. Just incredible uses. It's really transformed business. So let's go through a few use cases that I think hopefully will ring true to your situations. First, I'd like to talk about Mount Sinai Hospital. Mount Sinai is a company that grew by acquisition, and as a result, it has 66 different clinical systems that are running at it. So as you can imagine, having 66 different clinical systems and back ends, it's quite a daunting effort to try to put all this onto a portable platform like an iPad or an iPhone. So what they did is, instead of just emulating, or providing an interface to the same old PC interfaces, what they chose to do was create a nice, simple application where over to the left they have a nice selection of items in the toolbar to the left they can select from. These are the things that end users needed. I should say the people on the floor needed these solutions. And specifically with Mount Sinai, what they did is they did a survey and they asked, these clinical systems, these 66 different clinical systems, what are the tools you usually use when you're walking around the floor and you have to walk over to a computer? Instead of interfacing with a customer, you have to walk away from the end user and you have to go to a computer and start doing data entry. Tell us what those are, right? What those interactions are like with a computer. And when they amassed a list of what were necessary in terms of day-to-day by the people on the floor, they put those in the left-hand column, and they honed it down to where you don't have access to every little field that you would find on a computer. Instead, you have just what's important for doing data entry and getting through a customer interaction without having to walk to a computer. So they did a beautiful job. And for the doctors, they put together another tool. It was really nice. So they could walk around and get vitals and lab results on their end users. And they started with an iPhone application. They've since moved on to an iPad application. So nice little example there with Mount Sinai Hospital and how they empowered their doctors and their staff to interface more with their end users and not so much with the computer. Now, the next solution I'd like to describe is Sunbelt Rentals. Now, Sunbelt is a company that rents out heavy machinery. Apparently, and I didn't know this, but apparently when you build a building, you don't actually buy the bulldozer, you don't borrow it, you actually rent it. Color me surprised. I guess it makes sense now that I think about it. Back in the day, Sunbelt Rentals used fairly primitive technology. So this was in January 2009. This is what they were using for their field sales organization that would be going out from site to site and renting out equipment. It looks like it's a book that has inventory and looks like it's printed out monthly, so there's some printing costs around that. There's probably some shipping costs to all the people in the field, and looks like the most complex piece of technology involved here is that calculator. And so what would happen is the field salesperson would go out and talk to a builder and say, okay, well, what do you need and when do you need it? And then they would get on the phone and they would call up the head office at Sunbelt Rentals to a call center and say, hey, I need to reserve this backhoe for so-and-so on these dates, and all that work would be done in the office. Well, what they decided to do is look at the Apple's platform as a means by which to avoid a lot of unnecessary costs. They put together an application called Mobile Sales Pro. They happened to they had a developer develop this application for them. And there is, I think in a minute or two, Ishor is going to talk to us. He's from a developer. He'll probably describe to you how his company is able to develop applications very similar to this. But let's take a look at how this application is laid out. So looks like, first of all, they were able to, their mobile field people can plan their day. They can drag and drop their schedule around. They can access their CRM directly, so they can see how much a customer spent, what's upcoming. They can do fulfillment. They can actually, reserve hardware, and then they can track where hardware is going to be and as it's coming in. So really empowered them, and this is all real time into the database. So there was no calling into a call center. There were no wires being crossed. Two people running the same hardware at the same time. So really improved customer satisfaction, and those people that were working in the call center were freed up to do much more important tasks than merely answering a phone and interfacing with a computer. We cut out the middleman and we went paperless. Saved a lot of money with no printing. That was such a huge success for their company that they went on and had the developer develop another application for the iPad, basically the same application, but now leveraging much more deeply the GPS functionality of the iPad, so that when a field salesperson is out on the road, they can see who around them in terms of proximity is, and then they can click down on any one of them and look at the CRM, find out what the people in their proximity are doing in terms of their business, and know where their next sales call is going to be. And lastly, what they did is this is really smart. Mobile field salespeople, or salespeople in general, are statistics driven. So they had their developer put together this subsection called Accelerate, and this subsection of Mobile Sales Pro called Accelerate shows a salesperson exactly what their sales stats look like for the quarter, the month, the year, et cetera, and how they're tracking towards meeting their quotas, and really good sales motivator, and really improved. It also introduced a level of competition among the salespeople, because they got to see where they were in real time, and they could also see where their coworkers were in real time, and and it really spurred their business on. So an unforeseen benefit was the competition that it spurred between the salespeople. So we asked them, well, tell us, you're so happy with the iOS and how it improved your business. Give us a description of how it improved your business. And they said, well, we can visit more customers in a day. We could hit our CRM. We knew what we were walking into. We walked through the door. We could reserve the hardware real time, so there were no overlapping requests for that hardware. And we didn't have to go back to the office so much. That's less travel, and there's less printing involved, as I mentioned. They didn't mention it, but they don't have to print out that book and ship it out, which is ungodly expensive. And if you think about it, the cost of the iPad and the iPhone, obviously, it's been paid over multiple times by not having to print, and just by the increased productivity of having these tools, and also putting people that are on the phone to task on other missions within your company. So, really nice example of how the iPad improved their business. And then, incidentally, they also had their developer develop another application that is for their field service organization, the people that actually deliver the hardware. And again, the people that are in the trucks that are delivering the hardware, they can plan their day. They get details about where they're supposed to go. They get a GPS map, the route of where they're supposed to go, and they keep checking in as they're moving along. And they can say if they're en route, they're on site, et cetera. So it's really given the service management a lot of insight into where those trucks are and the hardware is and how their operations are running. And frankly, these are not expensive applications to write. They're quite simple. They're databases on the back end. There's some middleware involved, and then there's a front end being written. And I think Ishwar will get more into that. But really, it's amazing how these simple applications can really enhance your business and save you a lot of money, give you an edge. Next, I'd like to talk about Genentech. Genentech is a company that went to task to make a really nice suite of productivity tools beyond Apple's productivity tools. Apple includes mail, calendar, contacts. All these integrate with Exchange seamlessly. Genentech took it a step further. So I'd like to play a video for you. I really hope that the audio comes through. I hope that the video doesn't stutter. If it does, please somebody interrupt me and we'll just move on. But I think it's a really compelling story here.
Genentech is no stranger to meetings. Big meetings, little meetings, important meetings, very important meetings. Meetings of all kinds are faced with a common problem, running out of time before their conclusion. The people in this meeting are about to lose their conference room. Now they have to wander around looking for another one. Everything else is really hard to do that. Why do people keep saying that? Well, they're trying to tell you about Get a Room, an iPhone app you can get at appstore.gene.com. It'll help you instantly find an available conference room. Here's how it works. Select the building you're in, what time you need the room, and how many people. Get a Room shows you what's available. There's one over there. Then book the room, confirm it, and you get a nice receipt to show everyone that the room is yours. Now meetings everywhere can continue, more productive than ever. Meet well, everybody. Get a room.
But what a great story that is. And what's also great is that PCM can write that app for you. That's why we're calling this today PCM Has Your App. And it's a very modest sum. You can have all this power in your hands. And I'm not going to stop there today. I'm going to keep going a little bit. I think I've got 5 more minutes. I want to talk about, besides discovery and sort of sitting down and thinking about what kind of apps that we want to create for our company, let's look through the rest of the life cycle of actually developing these apps. We have to plan them, we have to design them, develop them through PCM, and then deploy them to our end users. And in the interest of time, I'm going to have to run through these slides. There are quite a few, but things that I want to touch on when it comes to planning is that it's important to be this is Apple's advice. Take it for what it's worth, but we suggest that you be fairly systematic. Figure out what your first application is going to look like, and what your milestones are going to be, what your goals are, what the timeline is, and then figure out who's going to be responsible, who they're going to answer to, right? Who the sponsor is potentially, if you want to go with the actual project management route, and then figure out if you're going to have your own developers write these apps or have PCM write them for you. So when it comes to figuring out what apps you're going to write first, our suggestions are, first of all, look at what your end users do most frequently, right? Is it booking a room? Yeah. Is it looking up people on the global address list to contact them? Possibly, right? And what we want to do is, when we make our first application through PCM, we don't want this application to be super high risk, right? We don't want our entire company's welfare to be based upon our first application necessarily, right? It's better to start with a small application that is lightweight and gets a lot of attention and gives you accolades, right? The better that app is, the more used it is, the better experience it is for your end users, the more they're going to go to those applications that you're providing to them. And when it does come time to have these complex business-changing apps developed and deployed, then you're going to have a really receptive audience. Really important to think about that, politically speaking. Politics around your audience. And also a big suggestion we have is don't try to do everything in one app. We've seen companies try this where they make one gigantic app that does everything. It does not make for a very good user experience. And it's much better to have bite-sized apps, one at a time, that do limited functionality. Now, you're going to find that development on the iOS is going to be quite different than on a traditional PC. Back in the old days, you'd spend a lot of time coding. Nowadays, you spend a lot of time designing. So, you know, even before you talk to eTouch, you know, or PCM about developing your applications, you're probably going to want to sit down and storyboard and say, okay, what is our app going to do? And, you know, you can even draw it with a magic marker on a whiteboard, right? Our app should go from this screen to this screen to this screen to this screen in order to achieve X, Y, Z, right? And then you can, once you have the design in your head, what you're trying to accomplish, then you can relay that over to your developer. And you can talk about, you know, what those requirements are, what the app should look like, what it's supposed to do, you know, and what defines success for you. And then over at eTouch/PCM, when they're doing the actual app development, they're going to design, they're going to code and verify, and they're going to iterate on it until it looks perfectly with you, right? And then once the code is done, they'll hand it over to you, and you can hand it to your end users. So let's talk about design for a minute. Now, a common mistake we saw early on with our app, with app design, was that people didn't really recognize the fact that the iPad and the Mac/PC are completely different, right? A mouse interface is a lot different than a finger interface. So with an iPad, you're going to develop a completely different user experience. This is Keynote on the Mac. Let's look at every single possible window you can open up with a mouse and a cursor. Look at that. Can you imagine using that on an iPhone or an iPad? Forget it. What Apple's engineers did is exactly what PCM's software engineers do. Look at this simple app. We made a slide. We put thumbnails to the left. We only took the essential data, the essential functionality, and put it in those big icons across the top. And most of the screen is the canvas here, where you can grab objects and turn them. Right? You're using your finger. You're using 2 fingers. You're using 3 fingers to manipulate the objects that are on the screen. So keep in mind, don't develop your apps for a PC if they're going to be run on an iPad or an iPhone. Now, when it comes to development, you have some choices, and I want to make you aware that there are 2 types of apps out there. PCM can develop both of these for you. The first one is going to be a web app. A web app is standard HTML5 content, and it's very powerful because you can develop an application and manipulate the data on your server, and that application is updated dynamically. Now, one problem, though, is that what if you're out in the middle of nowhere and you don't have cell reception, or if you don't have Wi-Fi reception? Then you can't access that server, then your web app's not going to necessarily work very well. The good thing is that Apple offers offline application data so that the data is cached on your phone or your iPad while you're away from the network. However, there are some performance considerations to consider. Now, when it comes to these web apps, they look just like any other application. You'll see one highlighted there. You click on it, and you see what launches. It looks a lot like Safari. However, you have the option when you deploy a web app to get rid of the address bar and the status bar down below, the navigation bar, and it looks just like any other application. Your end users would be none the wiser. This is a very lightweight app. It's written in HTML, as I mentioned to you. Now, there are some drawbacks to those web apps. And when we talk about those drawbacks to the web apps, I'll touch on those as I describe native applications. Now, native applications are the applications that you're downloading off of the App Store. These are applications that are written in Objective-C, and these are the apps that the majority of all apps that are written in, and what PCM would write your apps in typically. And the beautiful thing about Objective-C apps is that you have access to multitasking, to notifications, to accessories, to location services, to accessing, handing off data to maps or mail or getting access to your contacts or calendar. And then motion awareness if you want to use your accelerometer. So how does that translate? That translates to the fact that if you use a web app, you don't have access to all of those wonderful hardware features. So that introduces then our next topic, our next type of application. It's going to be called a hybrid app. A hybrid app combines both native Objective-C application with web content so that you can update your web content dynamically on your web server, but you still have the Objective-C foundation that allows you to access all the hardware benefits that are underlying the application. So those are the 3 types of apps that are out there. I know that PCM can write all 3 of those for you, so make sure that when you're looking at architecting your application, you're considering what your needs are, and PCM app development / eTouch, they will talk to you about the pros and cons, and you guys will come up with the best solution for your scenario. Very briefly, I'd like to talk about app security. Apple, if you have any concerns about security, Apple has written our operating system and our hardware and built our hardware such that it's incredibly secure. Across the wireless connectivity, we have full encryption, so worry not about the data. It meets every security standard that's out there. We have the 3-letter, federal government departments that are using our products in their productivity. So rest assured, if the government's using it and they're feeling comfortable, you should as well. Every piece of iOS hardware that we've created since the iPad 2 and the iPhone 4 has been full hardware encrypted. So it's AES 256-bit encryption. As long as you're using your passcode on that hardware, then you are using that encryption. And then if you'd like, when you're writing your application with PCM, they can create, on top of that hardware encryption, additional encrypted software containers. So for instance, if you are going to put some corporate data on your phone and you don't want, even if your phone is stolen and somebody is trying to somehow break through the hardware encryption, which is an incredible feat if they can in the first place, you can have on top of that a software encryption in a container to make sure that your corporate data has another layer of encryption around it. And then, of course, we have our file system sandboxing I want to talk about in terms of security. If you write an application, then I'm sorry. Let me rephrase that. Apple has implemented some really neat architecture around application security called sandboxing. Sandboxing indicates that an application can only access its own data. It cannot access another application's data, and this has proven to be the most secure implementation of application architecture. And so this is the case for every app that you're running on your iPhone right now or your iPad. Your applications cannot talk to each other. Now, if you have an application developed through PCM, then you'll note that both of your own personal applications can use the same key store. That is the caveat to sandboxing. So that means that you can have one passcode, and your one passcode that's a corporate passcode can be used to open any application. This is something that you could design into your apps with PCM should you want to. I'm throwing it out there so that when you're architecting your solution that you consider authentication around it. All right, and then this is sort of like this is a rephrasing of what I just went through, just to refresh your memory. Applications are signed and they're secure. You have secure networking under that. You have encrypted hardware. You have encrypted software containers. Your data is sandboxed. Applications can't do anything malevolent with other applications' data, and you have a keychain that keeps all of your passcodes hidden. All right, and let's talk about deployment of applications. If you have an application that is written by PCM, you're going to own that code more than likely, and you are going to deploy it directly to your end users, which is great. You can send them a link. They can download it via link. You can send them via email. It could just be on a web server. Or if you'd like, you can leverage mobile device management, which is your management solution to deploy the applications to your end users. Let's talk about mobile device management really quickly. Mobile device management is, if you haven't heard, a tool to scalably deploy a fleet of iOS devices. So this is the life cycle around an iOS device. You activate it, you set it up. This is something you would do on Christmas morning, or if you're working in IT, you get a pallet of iPads or iPhones, you unbox them and you activate them. Then once you do that, you enroll them in MDM, which is to make them corporate devices so that you can access Exchange, you can get corporate tools, and then lastly, you deploy applications to those tools, and then you remote wipe them once they have either been retired or stolen or lost, right? Okay, so briefly to run through this life cycle, let's activate and set it up. This is exactly like I said, what you would do on Christmas morning. You have to do that even if it's a corporate device. Then you enroll in an MDM. And when you enroll in an MDM, you push configuration of accounts. You push policies and settings. You can turn off the camera. You can turn off certain web access. You can configure VPN. You can do a number of things, including querying devices for compliance. It's quite amazing what you can do in terms of management. And this is all around reducing costs for calls to your help desk, as well as ensuring security around your corporate data. And then, when it comes to applications, you can remotely install applications to iOS devices. These can be corporate apps that PCM has written for you. These can be apps that are purchased off the App Store. The wonderful thing about this is that you, as IT, if you ask an end user to install an application via MDM, then you have the ability to prevent data from being backed up to iTunes or iCloud, and you can remotely remove that application if somebody happens to win the lottery and leaves the company, or if for instance, if the whole device is stolen or lost, you can actually remotely wipe the entire device securely so that the data on it can be never recovered. So, and also, you can also set up your iPad so that if the wrong password is entered too many times, it is wiped completely. So I know I blew through that. I had a ton of material in a very short time. I'm out of breath, and I hope that some of that data was absorbed that I just spewed out there. Can we take a quick breather here and ask for any questions before handing it over to Ishwar?
Yeah. If anybody has anything right now, or you can send them in and we can get to them later. Either way.
I am. Yep.
Oh, real quick here, Joe. It's a good program to use to design, organize, flow, and functionality of your app idea to hand off to the developer.
That's a great question. There are quite a few of them out there. In fact, I think since PCM is going to be doing the app development, I think I'm going to leave it to them to make to give you an idea as to what their preferred storyboard software is. But yeah, so quite a few of them that are out there, and they range in price from very inexpensive to quite expensive. But there are a lot of features that come at that cost. So, Ishwar, if you don't mind, I'll let you tell us what you prefer when it comes to receiving storyboards.
Thanks, Joe. Well, to be honest, Joe, we receive storyboarding across several different softwares. We don't stipulate a particular software to be used, but obviously there are any number of those that are available. In the past, we've gotten storyboarding, from the Softonic storyboard software, as well as sometimes it's just PowerPoint slides. So, we don't stipulate a particular type of storyboarding software as long as, because every enterprise, every organization has their own way of doing it. So that's kind of what I would like to say. We don't specify one particular one, but that you are right. There are thousands of them in the market. And any one of them would work. That's not a problem. Like Storyboard Artist. There's also the Storyboard Studio. There's tons of these softwares.
Would we be able to go so far as to suggest even is a whiteboard diagram sufficient to get a conversation started?
Absolutely. So a lot of times, when we come to an organization, and as you would, understand, Joe, that, the customers are in varying degrees of, mobile awareness. So a lot of times it's, a whiteboard session wherein they'll just sit around and discuss and identify, hey, this is kind of what it could be. And, we would take that, visual thinking, and then convert that into what it could be, and we'll provide them as, hey, is this what you're looking at? Those are approaches. And then there are other situations wherein the customers would have, done fair bit of design on their own, and they'll provide more specific requirements of how it needs to be done. So, does that help answer the question, Joe?
Yeah, absolutely. Do we have any other questions?
I think the follow-up was architecture, app design is the same as storyboarding?
Correct. Well, I mean, they're differentiated in that, when it comes to architecture, that is a very general idea, whereas storyboarding is going to be Clicking here goes to the next window, and what does that next window look like? Clicking on the next window at a certain place. So it's sort of a choose your own adventure diagram, sort of a fractal that's branching out to show what each sort of window is going to look like. So I hope that helps discern the two. Any thoughts around that, Ishwar?
Yeah, I think that's correct. Yeah, you've got a storyboard that's essentially, think about it as a, set of use cases, and in which you say, action 1 does this, action 2 does this. You have your, in the past we used to do this in rational rows for folks who have done it, way back in the past. So that it's similar to that concept.
Okay. I think it's in on the question front, so why don't we just hand things. Ishwar, I've gone ahead and handed you the presenter right, so you should be good to go on your portion of the presentation.
All right, give me 1 second. Let me fire this up real quick. Okay, so is everybody able to see the slide that I have?
Yeah, I see it.
Okay, perfect. So, I know I'm going to try to kind of, quickly, condense some of the stuff that we want to talk about. So just about myself, I'm Ishwar Srinivasan, and I work for eTouch. We are a partner for PCM, specifically around mobility solutions. A quick background about eTouch. We are a technology services company. We're headquartered in the Silicon Valley here in San Francisco Bay Area, and we have had multi-year committed relationships with regards to iOS application development, and have done application development of a variety of types of business applications over the years with several major name brand companies. So what do we offer from a mobility standpoint? So, there are 3 basic areas, in which we can kind of try to divide our mobility offerings. The first one, obviously, is mobility strategy or mobile strategy. This would be in situations wherein the businesses are just trying to become mobile. They have devices, but they have not really integrated that within their system, within their enterprise. They haven't really defined an application architecture, and they haven't really device mechanism to handle bring your own application, enterprise rules, security, and access, and any other systems that go along with it. And we would help companies come up with that strategy, advise them on what the best approach for these would be. The second box there is mobile application development. This is specifically around creating the applications that are specific to enterprise business needs. These could include mobile websites, hybrid websites, native applications, including the user interface and the user experience design. These applications could be e-commerce, social networking applications, collaboration, and multitude of use cases that are out there. The third option, the third model there is mobile testing and review. So in box number 1, when you talked about mobile strategy, that's when you're just trying to get into a mobility-based environment. Second, mobile application development is more in the range of you have a mobile strategy and now you want to get into application development specific to your enterprise. And mobile testing and review is wherein you have already done an application that has been, that is specific to your enterprise, but you want to test it. You want to make sure it is compliant to specific policies that you might need to adhere to. For instance, if you are a doctor's or clinician's office, some of your applications would need to be compliant with HIPAA. Or if you are accepting credit cards, you got to have PCI compliance. If you are dealing with some other classified type information, which has some sensitive data, you have to have other types of certifications, and we would help you with those aspects. What's our approach, towards the enterprise? You got application development. We can help you with application management as well as the device empowerment aspects. And application development, like I had mentioned, could be public application, customizable applications wherein you want to write integrations and interfaces to other third-party systems, or also integrate with other enterprise applications. And from an application management standpoint, the distribution, the provisioning, the tracking, the licensing, updating, as well as decommissioning of these applications, we can help you with that. Quickly moving forward, we kind of believe that there are three fundamental types of applications that people do, and there are obviously several ways in which these can be spliced and diced, but this is one of the representation. There are informational applications, which are like your mobile email, your finance dashboards, sales dashboards, other supply chain management access, where you want to view information, real-time access type stuff. The other types of application could be collaborative, wherein you are either sharing, knowledge management, editing documents together, video conferencing, interactive sales presentation. Those would come in the collaborative bucket. Then you've got transformational, wherein you are going in for a full field service automation, wherein you are integrating it with your overall business process. For instance, the Mount Sinai Hospital application use case that Joe Schubach just talked about is a transformational application, wherein you're taking beyond just informational or collaborative aspects and moving it into a full-blown business aspect within that. A typical development process, obviously, we're kind of showing it very abridged, and it is in line with Apple's recommendation. When you engage with us, there will obviously be a kickoff where we try to get understanding of the project, set the guidelines and expectations. And at that point, we'll determine, if a design has been done, or if we need to help in the design, or if whiteboards are needed, or if whiteboards already exist. So those aspects come in the kickoff, as well as the content materials gathering, wherein all assets with regards to the images, any particular color scheme that you use that is specific to your business, all of those would be gathered and in the content and material gathering task. Then you got the wireframe creation. The customers at times already have wireframes, or they'd ask us to create them, and we will go ahead and do that depending on So the task remains. It may vary from customer to customer as to who does that task. IT designers would then go ahead and build the skin of your app as to what it would look like, and what the use case scenarios would be, what the transference would be, and all of those aspects. Once the application design has been approved, development and integration begins. We create the app, we build all the necessary integration frameworks, any web services that it may need to integrate with, and then you go off with a project sign-off launch. Our approach here, which is relatively different from many vendors here between PCM and eTouch here, is that, when we go ahead and build an application, you don't pay for the application until you receive it and you're happy with it. So that's the most important part. So we're not going to ask you for upfront money to build any applications. It's always going to be post-delivery. Now, what we realized when we were talking with several of the customers, they buy iPads, and specifically with the small businesses, they have these iPads, but they haven't really put them to good use. As then, they're kind of determining, hey, what are the various types of application that can help me with? So PCM, in collaboration with Apple and eTouch, have put together this PCM Has Your App, package, wherein we're providing a set of 3 or 4 several applications that I'll go through some of them here for you, which could help jumpstart your needs around a small business standpoint. So some of these applications that we are kind of have in place are, there's a product catalog application wherein you can upload your product catalog, SKUs, or any type of information that would come about in that, and it would rapidly create an app that you can give to your customers to use. Another application is the corporate contacts application. wherein you could, it can hook up to your corporate, LDAP interface or any type of Active Directory interface, and surface a very compelling detail with regards to where that contact is present and how you can reach them, driving directions, and all of those built into the application. There's a sales lead tracker application. Specifically, you can kind of enter information about your prospect, select the priority of the type of relationship that you have with them, an easy to read screen of all the different sales leads that you have, and helps you collaborate with one another. Conference room application, very similar to the concept that you saw on the Genentech case study, wherein it provides you with the ability to schedule, manage, and work through within an enterprise which has multiple conference rooms and multiple folks trying to schedule time in that conference room in that enterprise. You also have a simple notes application, where all your corporate notes are stored in one place. They are backed up, and you have mobile access to it across all of your applications and across all of your devices, if you will. Moving next is also a where's my colleague application, wherein you can determine within the blueprint of the application, blueprint of your office, as to where a particular person resides and how you could get to them. You also have business expense tracker, which is more of travel and expense. Takes scans of the receipts that you have and also gives you a graph of what's been paid and what's remaining. So there are obviously other case studies that I can run through. But what I wanted to kind of showcase real quick here is that we already have a Jumpstart kit for a set of applications that are, available to you to use, and I will be more than happy to kind of, work with you and talk to you about how they could potentially fit within your organization. But beyond that, if there are applications that you want to create custom, I have a few case studies which I'll run through. I'll try to stop within a couple minutes so there's enough time for Q&A left. Some of the applications that we have built for some of the other customers are, we have the NASA mobile application. There's a suite of applications that we have developed for NASA, and these are all available on the App Store. And they, have been one of the highest downloaded applications across the iTunes App Store for some time now. We've done several applications for General Electric, be it sales calculators, credit applications, automating sales dashboards, automating, sales commission management, automating training of sales and CSR associates when they come into a particular enterprise. There's a suite of, I would say, about 15 different applications that we have done for GE, and this goes back to, just tying back into what Joe said, that instead of making one giant application that does all of these things, they were divvied up into different apps and targeted, for those specific people who needed to use them. This is more of an enterprise dashboard type application for Sam's Club that was done, and also Nissan Foods. This was more of a warehouse tracking. You've got goods coming into your warehouse. You hook up a Bluetooth scanner, barcode scanner, and you use that to tie back into your inventory management software to determine, to take account and inventory of the goods coming in. So the possibilities are endless. There are so many use cases out there that we could help you with. And like we suggested, if there is a particular application that you believe would greatly increase efficiency and productivity by making that data, that information, that task available across any and all devices, that's a candidate to be mobile enabled. And what kind of approach for mobility? We can work with you to help understand your business and determine what best approach to take there. So with that, I would like to kind of request Justin that we go to a Q&A session and try to answer questions we have. I have a few more case studies, but I think I want to give enough time for Q&A as well.
Okay. Right now, we just have one question from John at the moment about the base cost for apps. Is there a base cost? And since the apps vary, complexity cost must vary as well. So,
right.
Is there
so,
base?
So specifically for the Mall Has Your App program, that particular program already has some of these applications in a prepackaged form, and there are costs available on that. And we'd be happy to send out a URL that lists those prices out. But beyond those, with regards to, let's say, if you had a specific application that need to be custom developed, the cost of it, so you got to think about it in this way, that mobile applications are relatively quicker to implement as long as you have a team that has a good understanding and handle of mobile technologies. Unlike larger content management or knowledge management system projects, which can take months and years to do, a typical mobile application is more of, you're talking, a few weeks to a month type development, and there are several applications that can be done even in days. So the cost is relatively, for smaller, simpler application, it's not very high. But obviously, the price would depend or vary based on, the requirements that are defined. Does that help answer the question?
I think so. Let's see if he gets back to us. Are apps developed under client Apple app developer account or under app developer vendor account?
All right. So the approach here's kind of how it kind of works out. So, the development of the application, obviously, every individual person who kind of develops the application has to have an Apple developer account and all of that. So that's true. As to when we talk about deployment, that's when the difference arises. So when you deploy these applications, if you are trying to deploy these within your enterprise, you need to have an Apple Enterprise account. And I believe it's a $299 per year charge to Apple. Joe, correct me if I'm wrong. So that particular, and each of those enterprise developer account would give you a certificate that would be needed to build the application for your enterprise. So the vendor, as in us, PCM and eTouch, we will not be using our account to create these applications from a certificate standpoint. We would use the certificate that you would provide us with because it is an application that is going to be specific to your enterprise only. On the other hand, if it is an App Store deployment, it is not, then in that case, you're not going through the enterprise channel anymore, and the App Store deployments work a little differently. There is, in fact, the third approach, which Joe did indicate, which is the overall approach of an Apple B2B portal, wherein, let's say, you have created this application, but you want to give these application off to, let's say you are, I'll give you an example. Let's say you are McDonald's and you have individual franchise stores that are individually owned. So McDonald's create this application and they want to give it off to the individual franchises. So that could be a B2B deal, wherein McDonald's gets this app created and then distributes it to all their franchises by way of the Apple B2B portal. Does that help answer the question?
Let's see. I have the actual. So, Steve, follow up. What if it's for the App Store?
So, if it's for the App Store, App Store could be, App Store application can be deployed by anyone having an Apple developer account. You do not need an enterprise account to push it out to the Apple App Store.
Okay. I just gave them. I just pushed out the URL to the page that has the pricing breakdown.
Sure.
Okay, so let's see if we got anything else. Earl asked, do you guys have an hourly or day rate? It's per application, correct?
Yes. So our engagement models, we kind of have a per application fee depending on the effort that gets expended around that. Now, if there are scenarios wherein you actually want staff augmentation, wherein you already have a team and you want us to provide someone to help you either jumpstart or help you with the architecture in a T&M type scenario, we could do that as well. The rates obviously vary by location, and we'll be happy to work that with you if we had those details.
Okay.
But I would say that those are very, from an industry standpoint, they're very competitive rates.
That seems like it's it so far for questions. If anybody has anything else, what's the process? So Steve's asking, what's the process to get a quote on app development? It's just if you just go through your MacMall representative, or if you don't have one, you can send an email to me at the end of the presentation, and I will find one for you, and they can figure that out if it's a specific individual app to be developed. So Android, are any of these apps, they work on Android devices as well, or just iOS?
Well, we provide Android as well as BlackBerry and Windows and iOS app development. So so there are applications that we build that are native to these specific environments. There are applications that are built in a way that work across all of these platforms. So yes, we can help in Android and as well as Windows and BlackBerry development too.
And this is I know the answer to this question, but I'm going to ask it anyways. Do you develop any other types of applications besides what's shown on the MacMall page? So
the applications that are shown on the MacMall page are a starter set of applications. They are kind of, get your business on the iPad starter type of application. There are those are just a teaser set. That's kind of how I would put it. There are tons of other applications that we have developed, and the use cases that you see on the screen are some of the applications that we have developed. So this one that I just have on the screen right now for Princess Cruises is one that, if you ever go on a Princess Cruise line, they're probably using the application that we have built for them. So we've done applications that are for very large enterprises as well as small businesses which are just starting off. So yes, the application that is listed out there for you is just a teaser set.
Does the product catalog app work on all common browsers as well as all common tablets and smartphones?
The application that is provided in that page per se is iOS specific because that's for the iPad business program. But we can make it available across all of the devices. The charge for that would obviously be different.
Okay. Um, how much? What's the follow-up question? I think that's probably on a case-by-case basis.
Right. Yeah, we got to determine what all would be there. So.
Okay. Okay. If anybody has any further questions, we got a couple of minutes left. But the bit asks, so why would it be a case by case, and why would anyone want a product catalog only for iOS? It's just it's a preference on the developer, not on the developer, on the customer end. So some people don't want to spend the money to develop them across all. I think that's mainly the reasons why you would only have it for iOS.
Exactly.
It's cheaper to do it on one. And case by case, I don't know if there's an answer for that one.
Well, so for instance, if they come back and say that, let's say, a standard application that works across all platforms would probably be a mobile web type application instead of a native application, which could be done in HTML5, that particular platform, and that would work across iOS, Android, and all these devices. We could do that, we've done several of these applications. In fact, the one here for Cisco mobile application that is across all the devices, it is an HTML5 application. But the case in point, there is additional testing that is needed, and so that's kind of why there would be a differential cost for that. So that's all I was saying, that the cost listed on the page is valid only for an iOS native application. If other platforms are needed or other architectures are needed, we can provide a quote for that. But it's not going to be, the application can be built, relatively seamlessly.
Okay.
And obviously, you as the customer know what kind of penetration you need. So because when I mean penetration from a device standpoint, I have known customers who basically say that most of my users are Android or iOS, for example, while others would say that, hey, I have tons of BlackBerry users also. So depending on the different types of platforms, that's a discussion that needs to be had.
Okay. Actually, I have a last question here. Would the building it for Windows 8, would that go across all Windows 8, not just Windows 8 phone, but also the regular Windows 8 applications?
Mobile web applications would work across both phones and desktops, yes. Okay, cool. And those type of applications that work on both phone and desktops would be your responsive design applications.
Right.
That's a subset of HTML5 that you can use.
I think that's it for questions. We're a little over on time, so I think we'll kind of shut things down. But if you guys have any further questions, you think of something later, please go ahead and let us know. You can either hit me up, email. So go ahead and send us questions, and we'll get back to you as soon as we can. Thanks everybody for coming and listening, and I hope you got some good information. If anybody has anything further to follow up with us, feel free to contact me.